How about that? Ooh.
This whole technology thing's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, although I still feel like I'm in an HR video here.
This is how not to do things.
Yes, yes, exactly. Now let's take a moment to talk about equity. Actually, we're not gonna talk too much about equity today. We are going to talk about something related to equity today, because Cam, you and I have gathered here today to play a new game. We're going to play a game. Cass is going to set us up as a game show host, as they often do. But today, we are going to talk about one of the T's that we don't talk about too terribly often. So we always say that there are 8 T's that an investor looks for when it comes to your startup and investing in your startup. Those are team, TAM, timing, terms, technology, theory, tracking, and that was 8. I was going to say but that already hit the 8. So one of those in there is the terms one, which we don't talk a lot about. It's easy to reduce the concept of terms to just like, your equity percentage and like the dollar amount, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. So we're going to play a little game surrounding that. We'll get to that in just a second. But good morning, Cam. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
You know what? I am not too bad. I did, however, I wicked bit my lip last week. Significant enough that I had 2 cuts from the upper and lower jaw, which I don't normally end up with. And so it's pretty bad, and it's been swollen and stinging. And of course you do the rebite 2 days later, right? And so I was out, having dinner with my brother, and we were at this, we were actually at a Cantina Alley, which is great in Midtown. And which is I love going there. It was awesome. But I'm like having spicy, salty food with alcohol as I like rebite my lip with dinner. Yeah, no, perfect combination. So it's been a bitch all weekend long, and it hurts most to talk. So podcast should be interesting. But aside from that, I am exceedingly well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back in SAC. It was a full week of travel, but well worth it with some victories from our teams here at the Carlson Center in Sac State. So pretty pumped on the great work they did at eFest, and looking forward to.
So I heard. Tell me if this is true, Cameron. I heard that one of your student teams was in the top 5 for eFest.
Yep, they made it to the top 5 of the 25 finalists. So they got to do the extra pitch in the championship round and brought home $10,000. But just for context, the eFest competition had over 200 applications from 100 plus universities around the globe. From I think they actually it was around the nation, but and then I think there was a total of like 500 students that were like engaged across the application. So pretty awesome to have Sac State as a part of that top 5, and certainly a team that launched out of one of our hackathons and then continued through the business creation process and part of our Inno lab and just continuing to plug in. So I'm I was super excited to see them take on that top 5 and compete at the likes of other universities. And California overall did pretty strong, but we're
as we do. It's a startup competition, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Not surprised to see one of yours. I mean, terribly exciting, but not at all surprised to see one of your teams in the top 5 with Stanford teams, with Cal teams. Like y'all belong up there. Well done to you and your teams. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the kudos go to them. I just get to be a part of the journey for sure. So.
So we're here. We've done our little cold open. We've done some banter. We've said what we're going to talk about. We have yet to say, welcome to Zero Detraction, a podcast about how first-time founders create companies that scale. Regular co-hosts back at you here, JDM. Cameron, obviously. Cass is here to run a little game show that we're calling Reasonable Ask or Fantasy Land. Now, this is going to be a little fun. Founders are going to pitch, and we're going to decide if their ask is realistic or do they need a reality check from me and maybe a hug from Cameron. So here's how it's going to work. So we're going to put ourselves in the situation that we actually find ourselves in a lot. So we're gonna play the role of an advisor, an accelerator manager, an investor. We're gonna put ourselves right into that category. We're gonna wear that hat, basically the adults in the room, and Cass is going to play the role of a series of hopeful founders. And they're going to have varying levels of delusion or realism. That's for Cameron and I to figure out and for you to enjoy. And basically, they're going to present us with the traction and status of a company and the ask that they're making. And that ask can be varied. So it might be raising money, but it also could be team hires. It could be asking for intros. Could be efforts in trying to scale. They're going to have some type of ask. And we're going to evaluate, is that appropriate for their stage? If not, what might a reasonable next ask be? And if the founders are really determined for that to be their ask, even if we feel that it may not have the greatest match, then we're going to insist on, what's the evidence? What's the milestone that you're going to need to be reasonably hitting in order to be on track to raise that? So we're going to get those situations from Cass, and then Cameron, you and I are going to give either a green light, go for it, it's a great ask, a little yellow caution light, like, okay, you're a little early, here's what you might need to do first, or the dreaded red light, bro, you're living in fantasy land, pack a lunch, you're going to be here for a while. So that's generally how we're going to work. You ready to go?
Let's do it. Let's hop on in.
All right. So here we go. We've got the first one coming in from Cass here. You guys are getting this at the same time that Cameron and I are. We have not read these in advance. We have not vetted these at all. You're getting our true real-time reaction, which is a lot of fun for us and hopefully fun for you. Ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. All right. So company stage, pre-revenue, MVP launched 2 months ago. 400 users have signed up. 40 active weekly users. 0 paying customers. Mostly B2C with a freemium model. Okay. Our favorite. B2C with freemium.
With the 440 daily active users out of 400.
No, weekly.
Oh.
40 weekly active users. So this is the fun part because to me, mostly B2C with a freemium model and 0 paying customers actually reads to me like this is an app that you haven't figured out how to charge for yet, so we're calling it freemium. But let's see what their ask is. All right, the ask is a $1.5 million seed round. Cameron's already laughing. All right. Planning to use that 1.5. So here's the use of funds, right? Planning to use that for team expansion, engineering and growth, and a brand campaign to capture, this is a quote, to capture market share before competitors catch up. And Cass is going to cue us up with, they're ready to build an empire, assuming they survive the moat made entirely of vibes. All right. So reasonable ask, Fantasyland, red, yellow, green. Take it first.
I'm going red off the get-go. And I think and maybe we can prompt Cass here on the next one. I think the biggest thing, I'd first ask this founder or founders, whoever would be pitching, is what is the milestone you're going to get with the capital? So it's yes, you're raising the 1.5, you shared the use of funds. We kind of understand where you're at, but I would be making up assumptions of where I think that's going to get you. And so I think that's a really key thing to be thinking about in general is the use of funds are tied to activities, and those activities are to ultimately gain evidence along a path to a particular milestone. So is it to, your path really should be to actually a clear evidence-based go-to-market strategy that's repeatable. If you're raising a seed round, that's going to get you to your Series A, which is really investing in your growth engine. So you need to have all of that dialed in. And so I think the major red flags that come up are, if your funding round right now is getting you to Series A, and you have to have figured out how you're going to be monetizing this. So that's obviously a key element of, I think, the overall gap. And then also just the pathway to monetization comes in delivering value. And it's not clear that value has, transpired, particularly if you only have 40 weekly active users out of 400. That's a pretty significant drop off of people that have signed up. So I think really thinking through those elements. And so I think some of the contextual things would be, had they already raised a pre-seed round, and what did that look like? If not, maybe going back to the drawing board and looking at maybe the next key milestone or fundraising round is really tied to a pre-seed round. And, it's further kind of fleshing out some of those things, particularly, what's the monetization strategy, and then delivering the value element of it. Because I think there's a lot of innate risk in saying we're going to just figure out how to charge them later, particularly when not enough of them are demonstrating evidence that they're getting enough value to even engage in the app weekly. Weekly and or daily. So that's a challenge of so many other future revenue streams, right? If like you're going to monetize not from them, you're going to charge advertisers. You don't have enough eyeballs to be on there because they're not actually activating on it, right? So thinking about that, you can't just, charge down the line, or having them upgrade to premium to remove the little advertisers that you have on there. They're not necessarily going to be on there enough to have that really be a distraction. So thinking of some of those things down the line, but I'll pass the ball to you.
Yeah, I actually don't have a huge amount to add to that. I think you basically covered all of the bases. There's two things that I want to, maybe foot stomp a little bit. So one is that you can't raise, like, I'm going to put this under fantasy then too. You can't raise 1.5 in a seed round while having no customers, which is where we're at here, right? We have users, but no customers. And so we had a 90% drop off between those who signed up and those who are actually active weekly users. So I don't know what that means, but I'm not throwing a buck and a half into that until we know what that means a little bit more. That tells me that there's something wrong with either activation or potentially something wrong with go-to-market, where we're just acquiring the wrong people, or the problem isn't severe enough. And all of that is stacked on top of the fact that there are no paying customers yet. And so I want, and that's going to bring to the second thing that I want to foot stomp a little bit here, is on the zero paying customers yet. If you're trying to raise 1.5, like, there has to be almost always, if you're doing a SaaS model, there's gonna need to be some revenue backing it. If you have a really credible future model, like Cameron, you mentioned advertising as a play, that's a very different strategy, right? Because you're saying we're gonna get a large number of users who are very active, which creates a lot of inventory for us, and we're going to gather a lot of actionable insight about those users, so that inventory becomes highly targeted, right? Then the advertising play is well known. We know if we have those two things that we can get the advertisers. Mm-hmm. So that becomes a very long-term play. We're going to bleed money for years. Like, it's a completely different strategy for something like that. And it's a very intentional, strategy. You're not going to pretend to have this freemium model or whatever. So, and that's the thing that I wanted to foot stomp, was that this idea of a freemium model. So I'm leaning into that here, because all evidence indicates that that's where they're heading for, is that they're actually planning to monetize this directly through a subscription model. And so the way to think about freemium is as the opposite of insurance. And that's because they are literal opposites. So we all know how insurance works. Everybody pays and very few people utilize. And that's how the insurance companies make money, because we're all paying money into them. And the large numbers of premiums that they're collecting outweigh the damages that they're having to pay out from the small number of utilizers. In the case of freemium, it's actually the opposite. Instead of having everyone pays and a few people utilize, we have everyone utilize and a few people pay, which means that the dollars from those small number of people that are paying have to be able to more than cover the everyone who's utilizing. So there's some math that needs to work there. And you don't have to have that math figured out by a seed round. Like, that's definitely more like Series A. You really need to have that a bit more buttoned down, but you're going to have some evidence that there's a thing here. And right now we have no evidence at all that this is even monetizable, let alone that the math can work out with it. And so that's a pretty big disconnect for me. So if I were to like revise the ask a little bit here, if the founder would be open to that, I would say you're probably in a position where you can raise some money. It's not that you are not fundable yet. I think that you're fundable, but you're fundable nowhere near 1.5. This is friends, family, fools, with a little bit of extra work, a little bit of targeting, I think you can probably get to a pre-seed round, maybe a few hundred, with a little bit of extra work. But like I think there's a gap that's going to be really hard to close between here and a seed round of 1.5. So.
Yep, I agree.
Cool. Well, let's do another one. And per your request, Cameron, here's the instruction I'm actually giving to Cass. So I said, let's go again, but let's add into the scenario what the milestone is that's part of their ask, make it realistic to what founders usually include as opposed to what the best practice requires.
Nice.
I'm adding that last part in there because otherwise it's going to give us all good milestones, and then we're not getting any value out of it. We want a mixture of good milestones and bad. Okay. Yes, Cass, we do. Extra realistic. Great. All right, so here we go. Here's situation number 2. Here's the stage. MVP is complete. They have early traction of one paid pilot with a mid-sized company, and they got $5K in response to that. $5K for the pilot. 7 other companies are in the pipeline, but none have closed yet. They have a 3-person team, which includes a founder, a contract developer, and a part-time marketer. Their ask is for a $2 million pre-seed round. I just choked on that a little bit. Sorry about that. And this is the milestone they promise. With this $2 million, we'll build the enterprise version of the product, get our SOC 2 compliance, and land 20 enterprise customers in 12 months.
Yeah, so I mean, I like a lot of it outside the dollar amount. I think that's a pretty large ask for a pre-seed round. I think you're setting yourself up for failure for the next round. So really thinking that you need to raise subsequent rounds going forward. And I don't think that being bloated with capital will help drive the right outcomes for you at that stage. So getting from pre-seed to seed round, just having like an excess of capital, you'll play maybe more of an awareness game or something like that, which isn't really being intentional of like having that clearer go-to-market strategy that's going to help you actually be intentional of getting to those customers. I think there's going to be a lot of waste versus having the limited resources might drive some effectiveness and efficiency related to that. I think the like pre-seed round of capital seems more of the right size of a stage, I guess is the term that I'm going for. And then I think in terms of the like milestone, they're thinking in the right fashion of getting to the like more customers. I think part of that is like maybe bubbling it up into like what is the core component of your model that you're going to be validating. So it sounds like you're trying to validate the go-to-market strategy and actually fine-tune the sales process to have this be done in a more efficient and repeatable fashion. But I think part of what is maybe a gap there is like, is your in terms of your pipeline, like what's the like weighted price of that? And not just for like, oh, like we have a weighted pipeline of $1 million, but like realistically, what are the average contract sizes? Because it sounds like, yeah, you closed this customer for $5K, which is awesome. But if that's like, if your average price going forward is going to be 10,000, that's doable. But if it's your future contract size or 80 grand or something, it's not in the same element of what their commitment and the value you're hoping to get out of it. So those are kind of where my scattered thoughts come from related to what I had heard.
Yeah, I that's again, you're just crushing in all the good advice here. So there's 2 things that I want to call out here. So the first one is I just want to do like a math check, right? So the challenge, like more money always sounds like founders always think more money is better. And that's, as you mentioned kind of in passing, Cameron, that's not always true. Like it's more money is not always better. And here's one of the reasons why. So, and this is just a math thing. So the way that raising money in the early stages works is like, you're usually not doing a direct trade for equity. You're usually doing like a safe, right? Which converts at a point in the future. And we're just gonna, for like the sake of argument here, let's just assume that it's straight for equity to keep things kind of simple. So then it's gonna be based on a valuation of the company, right? And so let's say that you're working on a pre-money valuation of $8 million, which is way too much for a company at this, like you're not at that, but like let's just say that you were doing that, right? So you get 2 million pre-money valuation for 8 million, which means that you've now given up 20% of your company, right? Because the post-money valuation is 10 million, 2 million went in. That's that's that, right? So so now 20% of your company you gave away for this 20%, which again, by the way, are terms you are not going to get. But like let's assume that you did for a second, and this is a pre-seed round. So now you go to your seed round, and let's say you're going to have to, like, you can't do a down round, right? That's all those paths lead to very, very bad places. And so you're going to now raise, so the $2 million, you're going to raise what, 8, 10, 15 million, right? To like, cause you're going to do up. So let's just say you're raising another 10 million. What's your valuation going to have to be at, like, at that point before you're just giving away the entire company for scraps? And so if you do the math again to like let's say you were giving away another like 30% of the company or something like that, you're having to have now a pre-money valuation of $30 million at the seed stage. Like there are exits that are decent that are happening at that valuation. So we're in this place that's just fundamentally unrealistic for future rounds. And you're even if you were able to get the terms that you won't get, but even if you were able to get $2 million in pre-seed against an $8 million valuation, which you're not entitled to, it's going to pretty well screw you for future rounds. And you're going to have a hard time fundraising, and you're probably going to have to take some really shit terms in the future because your company isn't going to be able to keep up with what was really a very unrealistic raise at the outset.
Right.
So I want to do the math check there. Is that more is not necessarily better, particularly when the more is coming straight out of Fantasyland.
Right.
So I just want to share that. The second thing that I want to share is related to this is like I wanted to kind of dive into that misalignment a little bit more that you mentioned, Cameron. There's like that fundamentally we're asking for the wrong thing. We're saying, okay, we want to build an enterprise version of the product. We're going to get SOC 2 compliance because that's what you're going to need to go after the enterprise clients, right? We hear that probably every other week, right? And they're going to land 20 enterprise customers in 12 months. My problem is that they haven't landed one. Mm-hmm. You haven't landed one enterprise customer. That 5K was for a paid pilot. What was the outcome of that pilot? What do you get out of that? Was there is there a contract, an MOU, an LOI, something in place? Were there terms for the pilot that we're going to measure X, and if we hit X, we're going to move into contract with this? Like, what was the value of that, and how much are we increasing from 5K pilot to how does that translate into ARR? Right? Is that translating into therefore 10K ARR? Or is that translating into 100 ARR? Like, those are two very different scenarios. And then if we go back to, we have one paid pilot, 7 companies in the pipeline, and let's assume, like Cameron, it was weighted in a way that was favorable. And so like, these are all high probability closes. And so they're like, based on weighting, they're going to close 5 of them, which is just freaking crushing it. Like, what are we actually getting out of that? And I'm having trouble getting to a number that's going to get you to anywhere near a valuation that's going to get you 2 million in cash. From this, not to mention that you haven't figured out go-to-market, you haven't figured out the sales process, and you have actually just like almost like I just have a lot of feelings right now about this that are just based on the math being. I'll put it this way. So when I read through this, I don't hear Fantasyland. I don't hear like, oh, this found like they need a course correction, or like I don't hear they need a little bit of advice. I think, an amateur. Like that's the impression that I'm getting, is that this is just fucking amateur hour, and like that. And I'm happy as like through the programs, Cameron, that you and I do, I'm happy to help close that gap. Right. And help founders who are willing to learn, like get smarter about these things and become not an amateur anymore, because that's why we're in this game. Right. But I'm thinking amateur. And so if you're trying to fundraise off of something like this, like everyone else is thinking amateur too. Or they're thinking, like you mentioned earlier, I think, Cameron, right? Like a thesis misalignment. They're thinking that you're at a stage that you're not, and trying to evaluate you on the wrong stage.
Yeah. And I think, part of it too is just like thinking of, okay, you have to raise $2 million and it's a pre-seed. You're not likely going to be going to VC. So you're going to really need to be like engaging angels, and how many of them are going to be investing. You need a good number of checks to be written to be able to close that deal. So there's just a lot of mechanics, I think, that like aren't in alignment with the stage and the dollar amount. And I don't think that like the risks that you are tackling with that amount of capital are that big, right? So, the bets that you're needing to make don't need to they don't warrant that amount of capital yet to be able to prove. So I think there's a lot more that could be done with less.
Yeah, it's a good point. Just like one more thing on the math, and then maybe we'll do one more round of the game. But is you mentioned like VCs aren't really playing much at this game, right? Like the world's largest pre-seed VC is Techstars. And they're largest by far, I think. And they do a lot of that comes from their accelerators. And their accelerators, I think, invest $1.25, something like that, in the companies that go through their accelerators. And they do some other investments and follow-ons and stuff that are outside of that. But like basically, that's a very large pre-seed check. So if you're trying to get to 2 million, think about like the one from the largest player who writes these checks all the day, who happens to be a VC, and they're giving you that. Like, okay, like you're gonna have to collect a lot of those checks, and there aren't a lot of those checks out there because your average check at the pre-seed level is going to be like 25 or 50K. Right. So like that's just, you're just having to close 40 to 80 checks, right, to at that level to do that, because you're not going to find a 500K check. And when you are going after that 500K check, you're going after the wrong investor, and they're just going to string you along because there's and they're not going to do it intentionally. It's not because they're a bad person. It's because they're looking for something else, and so they're like, here's what we need to see in order for us to invest in you, and they're right about that, right? But the problem is that like that's not what you need to push your startup forward right now.
Right.
All right. Should we do one more?
Let's do one more.
All right, Cass, let's do one more. All right, Cass says they're going to close this one out strong, realistic enough to sting, like a true pitch meeting that slowly slides off the rails. All right, for our last round today, sometimes Cass nails it and sometimes they don't. All right, here's our next ride on the Reasonable Ask or Fantasyland Express. So company, still pre-launch. Their landing page is live. They have 1,200 email signups collected over 3 months from LinkedIn posts and the founder's personal network. They have no product in users' hands yet, no technical co-founder. They're outsourcing development. Their ask is to raise $750, friends and family, but including some random angels too. The milestone that they promise, they're going to use this money to fully build V1, launch publicly, get their first 10,000 users, and then raise a $3 to $5 million seed round next year. So actually, I first want to say...
you take this one.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is like, well done on the bad news is coming, but well done on the milestone definition, right? So like I like this is an example of a good milestone. It's bullshit here, but like it's an example of a good milestone. The work is being done. Like here our use of funds. Like we're going to build out a V1, and then we're going to hit by sometime next year, we're going to hit 10,000 users so that we can raise this seed round, right? So that's the components are there. We've got timing, we've got a benchmark to hit, and then a seed round. Like assuming that these are 10,000 paying customers, doesn't really say what the business model is here, but like assuming those are 10,000 paying customers, yeah, like a $3 to $5 million seed round on 10,000 paying customers is totally reasonable. And if it's a freemium model and you have 10,000 paying, 10,000 users, and a few hundred, or 1,000 paying customers, something like that. Again, we're still in like a reasonable territory there. So I do want to say like, great, like you understand the game here a little bit in the ask, and 750 to get to a $3 to $5 million seed round based on that is realistic. The problem is we're just not there yet. And so there's a couple of challenges here. So I think the strategy of doing a friends and family and maybe some random angels is reasonable. The problem is that the old adage from, was it General Patton or whatever, like no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. Mm-hmm. Which then Steve Blank, it may have been General MacArthur. It was MacArthur or Patton that said it. And then the Steve Blank kind of reworked that into no business model survives first contact with a customer. I think there's another version of that. So like no product survives first contact with the customer. And so like we're pre-launch, you've collected some email signups. I mean, that's good for you. I don't know what the ask was. which is kind of my question.
Right.
But so you've collected some people. Let's just assume that there's resonance with the problem.
Right.
Do we have resonance with the solution yet?
Well, yeah, I think that, as well as like, what's the like touch point from the last time they like signed up, right? It was like, this might have been a while ago, and you built a list. I guess it did give a timetable over like 3 months.
3 months.
3 months. So yeah, I think that that's fairly solid. But it's like, have you been updating them or engaging them, and they're staying on the wait list based on, you know, what you've shared?
Right. Is it an email sign up or is it a wait list, right? Because those are two different things. And if they're a wait list and they know they're on a wait list waiting for something and you keep them warm, that's pretty cool. 1,200 of those is nice. That's awesome, right? That's dope. But if it's 1,200 emails that you've randomly collected and never reached out to them in the last 3 months, your conversion rates are going to be really low. So it's a lot less interesting. You have some work to do. Yeah. But I don't like the technology is not their problem here. So like the fact that they're pre-launch, I actually don't care about. I don't think that's their biggest barrier to 750. The fact that they don't have a technical co-founder is not their biggest barrier, though it is a barrier. The fact is that they don't have anything in the user's hands yet. And like, even if we did some rapid prototyping and we get some like really robust validation and we get to that stage, 750 might be a little high at that point. But like, I don't think you're going to have any trouble, you know, raising enough cash to put together an MVP sub 100K and like start testing that at that point. If you can get to that level of evidence. But so far it sounds like we have a lot of like maybe early discovery, maybe discovery plus a little validation in there too, but we don't really have anything yet that's substantively validating the solution, unless it just wasn't listed here. Like, again, if this was a wait list on the promise of a particular solution, then I think that gets us closer, but I'm still going to want to see something akin to a rapid prototype that was in users' hands, or alternatively, something that's fairly straightforward, like a really well-known play. Like if you're doing a marketplace and these 1,200 email signups are from a mixture of buyers and sellers on a really, like on a premise that's really well known, then I don't need to see a rapid prototype because we all know how marketplaces work. And so like, then you're like, oh, we just got people who want to sell and buy some shit and they all know what they want to buy and sell. We have strong alignment in there. It's a warm list. Like, actually, that's pretty cool. Like you can very, very easily raise some money to close the technology gap, but it's not going to be 750 because you don't need 750 to do this. And your next step is probably not going to be a $3 million seed round. So that's sort of my thoughts around that. A little messy, but
yeah. So I was trying to go back to some of the numbers that I was thinking through. So they got 1,200 waitlist sign up or email sign up. Sorry, I keep jumping to the waitlist. I'm giving them more credit than maybe Cass did here. So that's about 400 a month on average that they're bringing onto this list. And they said in the next 12 months they're going to have 10,000 users, right? And so with the current average, they're only halfway there, and so part of it is not having clear evidence that they have a clear path to actually double the amount of people to not only sign up, but to activate engaging on this V1 of the thing that they've created. So I think there's still some gaps related to that element of their overall business model. The idea that I would have for them is to your point of like, they could create a MVP, or even if they have, I would be curious if they've created, you know, rapid prototypes or something to like put in the hands of some of these people on the list, whatever that being, an email list or actual wait list, to get feedback on the product, or actually see kind of if there's alignment on some of the value that could be created. But going with a more traditional friends and family, you know, if that's in the realm of possibility for this founder, you know, with that kind of like 100,000 sub 100, to kind of develop that first element of things. And then you could go for a more proper pre-seed round with maybe a little bit less capital than the 750, or maybe you do the 750 because you've got that further validation. But I think you could, instead of saying we're just going to jump to the pre-seed, trying to do more of that friends and family, get some initial checks to say, hey, the baseline I need to get to is this level of the product, that being the MVP.
Yeah, well said. Totally agreed. I'll just say my final verdict on this. If I'm reading it straight off the page, it's a red light. It's Fantasyland. If I'm giving it a charitable interpretation, I could see how this could be a yellow light. But there's some work that needs to be done on the number, and or alternatively, some work that needs to be done before you can do that number. But like, there's a little bit, but it's not in a very charitable interpretation would be, this is not insane. A direct reading off the page is, this is insane.
Yeah. So to build on the saying from, general whoever, and Steve Blank is like, I guess maybe no ask survives first contact with investor advisor. You go back to the drawing board. Are you sure this is what you are thinking about asking for? So I think that's part of the process. If that's like, hey, I just created this. This is kind of what my ideal world, quote unquote fantasy land might look like. Then with that kind of like, oh, actually, I don't need to raise that much capital. You're right. The risk is really this. And that capital might be much quicker to get to you actually getting that validation. And now you're able to raise the pre-seed round much quicker.
Well, awesome. That's all the time that we have for today, unfortunately. But this wouldn't be Zero to Traction without a lightning round of frivolous thoughts for you guys to close this out. And so I do have a little something I came with today. So there's this story. I don't know if anybody's been following the story of the pileated woodpecker in Massachusetts. Mm-mm. So this little woodpecker, I say little, it's about the size of a crow, so it's actually not very small. But this woodpecker, and it's pileated, so it has the black and white stripes on its head with the red. This woodpecker has been going around the town of, I think it's Rockport, Massachusetts, and pecking not so much on wood, but as on automobiles and busting glass. So there were these cars that were getting vandalized, and it took, I think, something like 10 or 15 cars and RVs to be vandalized before they realized this woodpecker was like landing on the windshield wiper and then pecking at the windows until they cracked, and then landing on the rear view mirrors, the driver's side or passenger side rear view mirrors, and like landing on there and pecking them until they shattered. And so this pileated pest is like is pecking on everything but wood, which I guess just makes it a pecker, and busting up cars. And as of yesterday, the casualty count is now up to 25 automobiles in this small town from the same woodpecker that's just vandalizing cars throughout Lockport.
Yeah, so the insurance companies are starting to get worried. How can we take down this little pecker?
Right, exactly. So I had to share that as my frivolous thought because it's one of those things that keeps popping up on social media, and it's a funny story. And I don't know if I'm rooting for the woodpecker or if I'm rooting for the poor owners whose automobiles were trashed. I feel like I haven't heard the woodpecker side of the story yet.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's hungry.
Yeah, I think it's probably mating season. It's like sees itself in the mirror and it's like competition, and that's a handsome looking fella too. Yeah. Damage.
Nice. Well, I guess I'll be quick here. The frivolous thought is more of just kind of where we're at in our remodel process. So we're starting to get some of the touches coming together. We got the tile in the bathrooms. We got the paint on the walls, but we are still seeing delays. So it's the, I've been on the wait list for a new kitchen and bathrooms for now. I think it's been like 14 weeks. And they said now it might be like June 1st. So it's, I'm really chomping at the bit to get back into the house. But it's kind of that, like, everything is getting closer. So you get more and more excited, but then it's like, oh, we still got a bunch of time. So, but we're getting there, and excited to be in there and be able to get back to cooking in our own kitchen and sleeping in our own bed. That's for sure. So,
man, yeah.
So surviving through that.
Yeah, well, at least you have like family nearby, and you're not like parked in a like seedy motel for months on end.
No, I have my, last weekend, and then this weekend I'm also traveling again to DC. So I'll have my stays of hotel rooms. But yes, we've had support from family, which is always nice. But it's also like you don't really have your alone time. You're like, I just want to sit down and not talk to anyone.
I got it. Well, on that note, I won't make you talk to anyone anymore. But that brings us to the end of Zero to Traction. As always, like, subscribe wherever you like and subscribe. Take a moment to think of a founder who's trying to raise some money right now. You got it? 3, 2, 1. Great. You got a founder in your head. Click share. right from wherever you're listening to this now. Send this to them. Make sure that their ask is in line with that, and tell them that they can drop a comment. They can send us an email with "here's our ask," and we will play this game right in the comment section or right in the body of the email. So reach out if you want a little bit of the feedback on the ask. We're always happy to provide a little bit of that. And then, as always, Cameron, thank you for joining me this week.
My pleasure. Happy to be back in the studio, and hopefully we can continue to spread some knowledge, and know that we're always here to support. So thanks for tuning in.
Speaking of support, we've been joking about a sponsor for not a particular sponsor. We've been joking about getting sponsorship on the podcast, and so we have a new sponsorship. We'll be a little bit more public about it instead of bearing it in the last 60 seconds of the podcast. But Cameron, you want to tell us about our new sponsor?
Yeah, so the Traction Lab and the future kind of traction community that will be part of the overall laboratory is excited to support the Zero to Traction podcast. And so maybe we can run an opportunity for some of our listeners if they comment or engage or share. We can provide some content or maybe one-on-one office hours of sorts through the Traction Lab partnership. So do keep an eye out for one of those opportunities coming up.
Awesome. And we'll put some links in the show notes if you want to find out more about the Traction Lab, the Accelerator, the founder community that go along with all of that. But that's the end of our time today. Thank you to the awesome people who run the Traction Lab for their sponsorship here.
For their generous support.
Yes, their generous support. And with that, have a fantastic rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.